Good morning, everyone. And today we are going to continue our discussion on 2022 Shift 1. Uh, so, we'll start our class with question number 71 and we'll go till today. We'll just try to cover 30 questions. So, we will be able to let's see if we will be able to. How many are there? Okay, I'm still waiting for everyone. Today, in within 1 hour, we should complete this 30 questions. And tomorrow there will be mock test, and we have to be ready for it. And question number 71. So we'll start quickly. Question number 71 says, which of the following are appropriate about Latin American literature? So they are talking about Latin American literature. And what else do you know about Latin American literature? Just write in the chat box if you know anything. Otherwise, we'll just. So, Latin American literature is, there are 5 statements, and we have to find which one is the appropriate about Latin American literature. So, A, there has been racial coherence and unity in literary representation of America. Alright, and statement B says, option B says, the Latin American literary tradition draws an analogy between plant growth and human development. So, are they talking about plant growth and human development? And again, there is Jules Booth's stories depict the geography of Chilambalan town. So, kind of everything is might be new for you. And Quechua had a wider popularity and presence across different nations, and Latin American literature is unitary and refrained from intertextuality of any kind. And the answer says B, C, D is the correct. It is not correct because of there have been racial coherence and unity in literary representation of Latin America. So, what do the racial coherence and unity? So, the word racial comes a little bit controversial, right? We can just omit that. And B number says, the Latin American literary tradition draws an analogy between plant growth and human movement. So we will understand. Okay, one thing could be true, human movement, but about plant growth, quite be little confusing, right? So you might feel that it's not the answer, but here it is. So, through the explanation, we will understand Latin American literature, as we know, consists of oral and written literature of Latin America in several languages. It can, the Latin America consists of oral and written language of Latin America in several languages, including Spanish, Portuguese, and indigenous language of the American. Alright, so it rose to particular prominence globally during the second half of the 20th century, largely due to the international success of style known as magical realism. So, again, we know that magical realism is present in Latin America. That is quite important topic that you should know about. So, as such, the regional literature is often associated solely with the style with the 20th century literary movement known as Latin American boom, and with the most famous exponent was Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Got it? And Latin American literature has a rich and complex tradition of literary production that dates back many centuries. And Friend's death and conclude with an epilogue, a happy marriage song on the occasion of the wedding of the poet's sister Cecilia. So this is all the point in question number 71. And 72, again we have to find the match. So there is a line from a particular poem and we have to find we have to match these lines. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness. That is quite very famous for the Beat generation. And who started this? Simply Alan Ginsberg. So if you know one answer, one option, you might be able to answer many things. So let's see if we can answer this with one option knowing it. So D should be 3. Where is D3? It seems D3 in all 3 options. So we can eliminate the second one. We are left with 3. Now let's see what else do we know about it. Again is faces along the bar cling to their average day. The awful daring of surrender, of a moment's surrender. Bent double like old beggars under shack. So do you recognize any of these lines? Tell me, do you recognize any of these lines? One is quite famous because it is a poem by W.H. Auden where he talks about September 1st, 1939. Alright, so it was actually faces along the bar cling to their average day. So W.H. Auden. In which option we have A4? Seems like is only in 1. So in that way you can answer. Alright, and here the awful daring of moments surrender. So we'll just, this line is actually from T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland. If you have read Wasteland quite in detail, you will understand that it was awful daring a moment surrender, which an age of prudence can never retract by this, and only this we have exist. So that was the full line of Wasteland. Another bent double like old beggar under shack. It is by Wilfred Owen, and it's in the poem Dulk a Decorumist. That is quite important, and we'll have just explanation. The first line here was taken from a poem September 1st, 1939 by W.H. Auden, and this line appears in stanza 5. The second one is, the line is from The Wasteland, and the full line is given here. And Dulk et Decorum Est is a poem by Wilfred Owen that we know that he is the poet of World War poet, and he was quite important figure during the World War First. So it was published posthumously in 1920. Got it? So the Latin title is taken from Ode to Three Valour of the Roman poet Horace, and means it is sweet and fitting. So it is followed by Pro Patria Mori, which means to die for one's country. Opening line of Dulk et Decorum Est is bent double like old beggars under shack, knock neat, cuffing like hags. We cursed through sludge till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and toward our distant rest began to trudge. And the last one, as we know, it is by Ginsberg, and that line is taken from Howl. And one of the most important thing is That line represent the beat generation. And again, it start with, I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness. Question number 73. Who among the following critics appropriate the following statement of Karl Marx? So when it comes regarding Karl Marx, you should remember that they are talking about economics or finance perspective of any cultural, like there should be production, consumption, all these things are present if they have mentioned Karl Marx. So we have to find, they cannot represent themselves, they must be represented. So we have to find who among these critics had made this particular statement. So remember, it was made by Chandra Talpade Mohanty. Correct. And correct explanation is Feminism Without Borders. So that was the work that Chandra Talpate Mohanty wrote, and it's quite important. You might find the question based. Actually, they have asked based on that. So Feminism Without Border, Decolonizing Theory, Practicing Solidarity is a work by Mohanty, Chandra Talpade Mohanty, and it is, he says, it is time to move beyond the Marx who found it possible to say they cannot represent themselves, they must be represented. So little bit introduction about little bit biography about Talpade is that he is the professor of women's and gender studies, sociology, and the cultural foundation of education in Dean Professor of Humanities at Syracuse University. And Mohanty actually a post-colonial and transnational feminist theorist, has argued for the inclusion of transnational approach in exploring women's experience across the world. Correct. Chandra Talpade, and she is the feminism. Excuse me. Remember these work. Feminism Without Borders, Decolonizing Theory is quite important work that you should remember. And also Practicing Solidarity, and these, if you can remember, it's good, but remember this name. Feminism Without Borders, Decolonizing Theory. Question number 74. Which of the following articles of Indian Constitution made the... So again, couple of questions already we have found regarding Indian education in this paper. So which of the following articles of the Indian Constitution made the provision for use of English alongside Hindi for official purpose for 50? So they are talking about article, and it is article 343. We have explanation of Article 343 says that the Constitution of India in 1944, and it says official language of union, the official union is the same thing, shall be Hindi in Devanagari script, and the form of numerals to be used for the official purpose of the union shall be international form of Indian numerals. Got it? And little bit introduction about it, and what it says. Parliament may be by law provide for the use after said period of 15 years of the English language or the Devanagari form of numeral for such purpose as may be specified. So remember the article, they won't repeat the same question, but you should understand that they are started asking about the education, I mean especially English in India, and whatever the reformation has happened before, that they usually ask. So anyway, question number 75. Which of the following is not true about lyrical ballads? Okay. So, which of the following is not true about lyrical ballads? So, that also we are going to discuss in today in our literary criticism. We'll have class on that, but before that, we have to solve this anyway. So, which of the following is not true about the lyrical ballads? So, lyrical ballads, it turns English poetry away from the social and intellectual sophistication of the 17th and the 18th century poetry. So, of course, it is not about 17th century. I mean, from social and intellectual sophistication. What do you think? It is very particular about the form, and it is actually not. So it turns English poetry away from the social and intellectual sophistication of the 17th and 18th century. That is correct, because he wanted that poetry for the common people as well, and he said that poetry should be written in uh, common language, and poetry should be spontaneous. Anyway, we'll just discuss in detail. So it particular form and it is definitely not about form and structure, because it is only about the language there, right? And it takes poetry out of the confine of reason and intellect to the unravished and unspoiled beauties of nature. So it is the manifesto of romantic poetry, and that is true. Got it? So our answer is it is not particular about the form and the structure of a poem. So this is the one that is not true. All of them are true. Got it? So explanation is here. The preface to the lyrical ballad, as we know, is an essay and by William Wordsworth. Remember that preface was not published in 1798 edition, but it was published in the second edition, and the date is 1800, that you should remember. And it is the poetry collection lyrical ballad, and then greatly expanded in the third edition of 1802, and it has come to be seen as de facto manifesto of the romantic movement. So everything is answered here, right? And the four guideline is what I was talking about. Ordinary life is the best subject for poetry according to him, and Wordsworth uses common man's language. So everyday language is best suited for poetry, and that was his statement. Uh, expression of feeling is more important than action or belief. And he says that poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feeling that takes its origin from emotion and recollects it in tranquility. So that is the main concept writing behind the manifesto of this romantic manifesto. Got it? Question number 76. Who said that there is and there can be and there ought to be the difference between the language of prose and metrical composition? So again we are having the follow-up question. There is, there can be, and there ought to be the difference between the language of prose and metrical composition. So it was again William Wordsworth. And where did he say that? He said in preface to the lyrical ballad in 1800, and is an epoch making contribution to the English literature. And what other, it is a landmark, as we know, in literary criticism. And Wordsworth has declared a break of the new classical tradition, and he says poetry should be in common language, in everyday language, and so every common person can relate themselves. So anyway, he has discussed the characteristics of a poet, his function, and his dominions elaborately. And during the new classical age, the language of poetry was decorated and figurative. So it dealt with the aristocratic way of life before Wordsworth, but Wordsworth revolt against them, and he changes the classical theory of poetry, and he declares that that a poet is a man speaking to men. Got it? And the language of poetry is the language of common people, and he boldly proclaimed that there is no essential differences between the language of prose and that of a metrical composition. In fact, with the publication of this preface, Wordsworth started the Romantic Revival. And Coleridge was also there. Coleridge disagrees with Wordsworth regarding the statement that, that there neither is nor can be any essential differences between language of prose and metrical composition. Coleridge asserts that there is and there ought to be an essential differences between the language of prose and argues thereof poetry. Got it? Question number 77. What is the correct sequence of the following feminist text? Tell me. So it's talking about feminist text, and we have to find which one is the correct sequence of the. So it's like the order, uh, like chronological order. So we have to find the which starts. So sexual politics, a world of differences, the female imagination, and thinking about woman, a room of one's own. So if we say here all the work is like after Virginia Woolf, because every work is talking about Virginia Woolf. So certainly that it must have been written before all of them. So we have to find a room of one's own where it is. So if we know one, we could answer. Otherwise there is one more option, uh, like the latest one, if you say, could be uh, that the female imagination or a world of difference. Anyway, we'll just see the answer. So here E in two options, so we might get confused, and D is the second one, which is thinking about women. And the correct explanation for it, a room of one's own, we know it is by Virginia Woolf. Remember the date, it is 1929, and it is based on two lecture Woolf believed delivered in October 1928 at Newnham College and Girton College. And Wolf's essay examines the educational, social, financial disadvantage women have faced throughout and remember the very famous statement that Wolf made in this lecture is that a woman must have money and a room for her own if she is to write fiction. So that is the mean, and you have, I think you are aware of this line, and also you must have faced this kind of question in the exam as well. So anyway, so although Wolf described this as an opinion upon one minor point, and the essay explored the unsolved problem of women and fiction to show you how I arrived at this opinion about the room and the money. So again, there is two things happened here in a room of one's own. One, that she made a very important remark that a woman must have money and room of her own if she is to write fiction, and the second one is that she creates an imaginative character of Judith Shakespeare, and she says that if Shakespeare had a sister, she might have lived, concluding that she would have been so thwarted and hindered by other people, so tortured and pulled asunder by her own contrary instinct, that she must have lost her health and sanity too, certainly. And uh, uh, here Woolf is referring that if Shakespeare had a sister, uh, and that she imagines one sister, her name is Judith Shakespeare, that name you should remember. So if she was as talented as Shakespeare, she would have faced so many challenges. Like at that time, nobody would have let her go and study and pursue her career, and because of that, she might have felt depressed, uh, Her health might have declined and she would have ultimately died or committed suicide. Got it? So that was about A Room of One's Own. So Thinking About Women by Mary Ellman is a work in 1968, and it is a scathingly witty attack on literary misperception of women and prejudice against women in letters by an obscene critic. So just remember the name. Thinking About Women is by Mary Ellman, and the date is 1968. Sexual Politics, everybody knows, is by Keith Millett, and which was published in 1970, and it is the debut work by American writer and activist Keith Millett, based on her PhD dissertation. And the main thing happened here in like that this particular text, Sexual Politics, analyzes subjugation of women in prominent art and literature in the 20th century, especially looking at the ubiquity of male domination in culture. The Female Imagination is a work by Patricia Mayer, and it was published in 1970s. The complete title is The Female Imagination: A Literary and Psychological Investigation of Women's Writing. So that you have to remember the name of the particular work by this author and also the date if possible. Got it. One is A World of Differences by Barbara Johnson, which was published 1987, and is a willingness to carry an inquiry on the point of undecidability, necessity at odds with political engagement. So just remember the names and the date. So question number 78: Who among the following attached himself to the Earl of Nottingham? When it is talking about Nottingham, you should remember that it was also a theatrical, like, you know, King's Man, and there were other, right, Lord Chamberlains, all these people were there, right? The theatrical company at that time. So Earl of Nottingham was quite associated with Christopher Marlowe, and that, if you read the history, you will find the answer. Got it? And the explanation, there was like Admiral's man, and another was Nottingham. So the Admiral Man, also known as Admiral Company, more strictly the Earl of Nottingham. So that is very important. Was a playing company or a troupe of actors in the Elizabethan and Stuart eras. It is generally considered the second most important acting troupe of English Renaissance, and Lord Chamberlain's King's Man. Got it? So these two were quite famous in theater. So if the admiral's men were having difficulties in the city in this period, they were still welcome at court and are still popular in the towns and shire. Just a little bit introduction about it, and this was perhaps the height of their achievement in this year, that Aline was making a sensation acting the heroes and of Christopher Marlowe, and Tamburlaine was printed in 1590 with the name of its title page. Some of the plays of Robert Greene, Thomas Lodge, and The Wounds of Civil War were also in their repertory in the early. Question number 79, and you have to answer. I still don't see anyone here. Okay. So I hope everything is clear till now. We'll just move to the question number 79. Identify which are paired correctly. And we have to Madness and Civilization is by Foucault, right? Michel Foucault. So here it says Roland Barthes, so this is incorrect. And remember, the other work, Poetry and Repression, is by Harold Bloom. Strangers to Herself is by Julia Kristeva, and Criticism in Wilderness is Geoffrey Hartman. Introduction: Madness and Civilization, History of Insanity in the Age of Reason is an examination by Michel Foucault. Remember the one term that they talk about: madness and civilization. Meaning of madness is the cultural law, politic, philosophy, and from the Middle Age until the 18th century. Remember the date, they start from not like from very old time, like Middle Ages to 18th century, and critique the idea of history and historical. Criticism and Wilderness is the study of literature today, is a book, 1980 book by Geoffrey Hartman. And Poetry and Repression is by Harold Bloom. And The Stranger to Ourselves is by Julia Kristeva. And this book is concerned with the notion of a stranger, the foreigner, outsider, the alien in a country, society, not their own, as well as the notion of strangeness within the self, a person's deep sense of being as distinct from outside appearance and their consciousness ideas. Great. Question number 80, assertion and reason. There is one statement called assertion and the other is reason. We have to find if both of them are correct or if reason follows the correctly. So the assertions, one says Roland Barthes describes two basic category of text. So Roland Barthes, of course, he talks about read early and write early, right? We have seen in SNZ. That was his work that he coined the term, the read early and write early. You should. So this statement is correct because you have to add because if it is talking about reason, because language is the window through which one sees the world. It seems both are correct, but it doesn't explain about read early and write early. So both A and R are correct, but R is not the correct explanation of A. So it is taken from The Pleasure of the Text, and which is a book by Roland Barthes, and where he talks about his ideas about literary theory. He divides the effect of text into pleasure and translated as bliss, and the French word also carries the meaning of orgasm. So the distinction correspond to a further distinction. So simple. Barthes is he makes a distinction between two: text legible and texty scriptable. We can just simply say read early and write early. Remember these two important terms that you will definitely fear. And this was identified and explained in where Barthes SNZ that I told you in the beginning of the question. So Barthes argue that write early texts are more important than read early because he sees the text unity as forever being re-established by its composition and the codes that form and constantly slide around within the text. Got it? So here question number 81. Question number 81 is about aporia, and as we know, it's an important term, aporia in deconstruction, right? So we'll just, here it says that we have to find the correct explanation, correct term of it. It denotes a speaker's character, deliberation on a resolver. This question was dropped and everybody got the equal mark for that. And aporia, it is an address to something inanimate. I will just go to the explanation. If it is dropped, it's better to go and see the explanation instead of just making ourselves confused. So aporia is also a rhetoric device whereby the speaker expresses a doubt, often feign and about his position, or ask the audience rhetorically how he or she should proceed. One aim of aporia may be discredit the speaker's opponent. Aporia is also called dubitatio. So one more thing I would like to tell you, we have everything discussed in English, right? And like there are few people that who wants in Hindi also these kind of papers. So what we are going to do, there will be of course English for everything, and one more video will be which will be covering all 100 question in one class. There will be only in Hindi. We'll explain, we'll talk in Hindi, and that will be, and also similar class will be in English as well. So there will be two version of the class. One will be in English and one will be in Hindi. So that is Hindi thing is only for the YouTube, uh, for everyone, because we need people to uh, to be here to participate as many as they can. So that'll be, so anyway, we were talking about aporia. Remember, aporia is also a rhetoric device whereby the speaker expresses doubt. So aporia, simple one term is doubt, often feign about his position or ask the audience rhetorically how he should proceed. So suppose aporia is like someone is acting, and in the stage an actor is asking the audience that okay, there is two things. I hope you have must have seen one program on Netflix. That program was about one adventure where Ranveer Singh was doing an adventure, and in that uh, he was asking, shall I, should he jump or should he take the rope, that kind of. So he was asking to the audience, to the viewers, and there we had to press okay, you take the rope, or somebody must have said so. So that kind of question, when actor or somebody asked from the audience. One aim of aporia may be discredit the speaker's opponent. Aporia is also called dubitatio. For example, one example is also here. I'm at no loss for information about you and your family, but I'm at a loss where to begin. Shall I relate how your father Thomas was a slave in the house of Alpias, or who kept on an elementary school near the temple of Theseus, and how he wore shackles on his legs and a timber collar around his neck? How your mother practiced daylight nuptial in an outhouse next door to heroes, the bone setters, and so brought you up acting tablets vivants, and to excel in mirrored part on the stage. So these kind of question they ask to the audience or maybe to the reader. So in deconstruction, aporia is quite important. So which of the following observations are true about Roland Barthes' contribution to literary theory? There are again 5 statements we have to. So do we see Roland Barthes, Michel Foucault? These are quite important, and you are facing them not one but many time in one single paper. So in that way you have you just got the idea that how important Roland Barthes and Michel Foucault and of course Mikhail Bakhtin, all these people are. Okay, so here are the statements again. He rejected the model for structural analysis of a narrative. Does he talk about, does he reject the model of a structural analysis of narrative? Or again, I'm using aporia for you guys. So, or does he perceive meaning as an effect of various interconnection among linguistic code? Of course, he talked about codes in there was so there was like 5 codes, right? Procreative, proactive, these kind of we have discussed in like 2023 question paper. So that could be not could be, this is definitely true that he talked about the codes, and we'll just analyze the second is statement. Third, he identified the various codes found in the process of structuralism, of course, again, and as we know, he's from the structuralism, so we can just guess okay, that is also can be correct. So we'll make the question mark, this can be correct. And D says he played a significant role in the development of semiology, and that is certainly true when they're talking about sign, symbol, and all. And we know that he has mentioned that in SNJ, Italy, he talked about symbol, sign, and all. So this is definitely true. And what about E? Uh, so he didn't reject structuralism because he applied structuralism, right? So that is definitely not. And he questioned the concept of literary criticism as an act of uncovering some hidden truth intended. So, like we know, B, C, D is certainly there. So, we have to find where B, C, D is together. So, it seems B is uh, in 3, but also C, D. Here B is present not there, so simple will just eliminate. Here it says all the statement. As we know, A is not there because he accepted the structuralism, he didn't reject. So simply we'll just mark B, C, and D. And explanation is here. Roland Barthes, as we know, is a French essayist and writing about semiotics. So that semiology wala is true. And the formal study of symbols and signs pioneered by Ferdinand de Saussure help establish the structure and the new criticism as so again we know he established structuralism did not. So these two statement is itself here is true. And his first book, Writing Degree Zero, was literary manifesto that examined the arbitrariness construct of language. And SNG that he talked about, read early, write early, and he also talked about the 5 major codes that I told you that we have discussed in 2023 PYQ. And here some of the codes with numeral lexile throughout. Lexia means, as we know, that is kind of dictionary, and that is related to word. So has being defined as unit of text chosen arbitrary. So that's all. And again here we have to find the correct combination. Here again the correct combination. So tell me first, what do you know? Nihilism is quietly very famous about it. And nihilism means it's something like, the meaning is not there. So just simple thing that and surrealism will just begin with Dadaism. So Dadaism quite famous in German, and actually from Switzerland and Berlin also. And we know that Tristan Tzara is associated with that, and certainly we know Filippo Marinati is from surrealism. So these two we know quite. And nihilism also is something. Turgenev is there. So we'll just move to the A and C is correct for certain. Where is A and C? And it seems A and C is only together in the first option. So here is drop because there are other right answer also, because as I said, futurism is definitely by Andre Breton. So seems like all are the correct one. We'll just have explanation. Dadaism is in Germany. Remember Germany, and it was in 20th century, and most widely accepted account the name was adapted in Hugo Boss Cabaret Voltaire in Zurich. Just remember the name who are associated: Jean Arp, Richard Holstein, Tristan Zara, and Marshall Janko and Amy. Only one person we know Dadaism because of Tristan Zara. So simple, that one is correct. Again is photorealism. Photorealism or superrealism, you can say, is the art of encompassing painting during graphic media and all. It was the American movement beginning late 1960s to 1970s. Surrealism is simply, we know it is definitely by uh, what is his name? Associated Filippo Marinetti. And just a little bit introduction, it is actually cultural movement that developed in Europe and in the aftermath of World War I, in which artists depicted unwavering illogical scene and developed technique allow the unconscious mind of. Remember, the term surrealism actually originated from with Guillaume Apollinaire in 1917. And Apollinaire is considered one of the foremost poets of the 20th century, as well as one of the most impassioned defender of Cubism and forefather of Surrealism. And some of the and Filippo Tommaso Marinetti, again we found that uh, question in a net previously. I think it was in 2021, I think. So and also before that, so Filippo is quite famous for surrealism and manifesto about of futurism. Again, Turgenev is a Russian novelist, short story, as we know, and popularized Russian literature in West. His first major publication is story collection titled Sportsman Sketches and was milestone of Russian realism. Again, question number 84. Identify the combination that belong to the sci-fi perspective fiction genre. Again, simply we have to just find sci-fi. And Salman Rushdie's Satanic Verse is definitely not about science fiction. And the other is because of Generation 14 is our science fiction work. That is definitely because if you did know about it, that question they have asked in net also before also, and this time again. So Generation 14 is there, and again where two option we know now we can easily answer. Salman Rushdie, the Satanic Verse is not science fiction. So we'll just, where is D? We'll just eliminate D. By only one, you just, C. We have to remove C. So only two option we just remove. So C, Satanic Verse is not there. So we are left with 2. And again, we should know that Generation 14 is a science fiction again in both option, and other is B. Tahmina Durrani's Blasphemy is also science, is not science fiction, and Gautam Bhatia's The Wall is a science fiction. Simple. ADNE correcting explanation. The woman who thought she was a planet. Through by the name we think it might be about science fiction because they're talking about planet, but it is not. It is a well regarded in science fiction and fantasy. It is because of the name. She was a planet. Science fiction fantasy. Vandana Singh. Little bit confusion here. A is there, and bring her unique imagination, a wider audience in this collection. So simply, of course, I was wrong about that. The woman who thought she was a planet is science fiction, and D, as we know that it's correct, Generation 14, and of course E is The Wall by Gautam Bhatia is science fiction. The other works, Generation 14 is science fiction, and Gautam Bhatia is talking about The Wall, is speculator fiction novel, was published in HarperCollins. Another explanation, Blasphemy was successful but also controversial. In the novels, he describes the secret lives of Muslim clergy and a spiritual leader of peers. And Satanic Verse, because of that, Salman Rushdie was they've released fatwa against him, right? So that is question number 85. Should poet's bicycle pump the human heart, or squash it flat, man's love is of man's life. So that we have to find which line it was taken from. So simply it was from Phil Kingsley Amis, a bookshop idol. Question number 86, again reason assertion. We have to find in the 19th century, Charlotte Perkins Gilman, on quite famous on economic things. Uh, so Charlotte Perkins Gilman also wrote, no, like the wallpaper or something, I don't know. We'll just see in the explanation. The representation of women as seekers was not socially acceptable in 19th century America. Seems like both the statements are correct and R is the correct explanation. So along with the Civil Right Act movement, we'll just read about a little bit about Charlotte Gilman, and colored people and women started to be aware of their rights towards speech and freedom too. During that period, women were being turned down by society when they had issues in marriage, social status, and speech. So, Gilman stated economic independence for women necessarily involves change in the home and family relation. Gilman also inspired society to think of feminism and women as independent. So, Gilman believed economic independence was the only thing that could bring freedom to women and make them equal to men. That is, in 1898, she published Women and Economics and Theoretical Treatise, which argued, among other things, that men subjugate women and that motherhood should not prelude a woman from working outside the home. So, question number 87, we have to match the following with the date. So, there are the list of work and so some important date is that you should remember about 39 is definitely Finnegan's Wake, that sure, and of course 1922 is Wasteland, and Sons and Lovers is 1927. So it seems like all are the same, right? A, B, C, D. So A, B, C, and D. Only one is confusion here. Sons and Lovers was published in 1913 and To the Lighthouse 1927. Otherwise, all are the same. So it was quite easy. Sometimes they will ask like that. So To the Lighthouse, we know it is about. So was just simple. To the Lighthouse, first we know it is the date 1925 by Virginia Woolf, and of course it is a stream of consciousness. That is quite important type of narration, and the books had 3 sections, and revolves around various member of a Ramsay family. And also these days the setting of the place is quite important. So summer residence on the Isle of Skye in Scotland. A central motive of this novel is the conflict between feminine and masculine principle at work in the universe. So there is a 3 part that we know. It is Window, Time Passes, and The Lighthouse, right? And Sons and Lovers, we know it is by Lawrence and it was published in 13. It is the story about Paul Morrell and her mother, and also Paul Morrell and his mother, and also his lovers, which were Miriam and also Clara Davis. So these characters are quite important. Finnegan's Wake is an experiment novel by James Joyce. Date is 1939. It was published. The Wasteland, of course, is by T.S. Eliot, which was published in 19. So these days are important. Also, you should know that it was published in the Criterion. Question number 88, again two statement. Hannah's Arden defactualization is very close to the concept of post-truth, and post-truth relies on absolute lies. So statement 1 is correct and statement 2 is incorrect. Why post-truth? Simple. It refers to the 21st century widespread documentation, and it concern about the dispute over public truth claim. And the terms academic development refers to the theories and research that explain the historical specific cause. So these are simple, and remember one name also. Hannah Arendt is the main proponent of the post-truth theory, and that we have to remember. In her essay Lying in Politics 1972, Hannah Arendt described that she terms defactualization, or the inability to discern fact from fiction, a concept very close to the what we now understand by post-truth. Question number 89, the ancient and the modern quarrel. Between that we discussed yesterday in our criticism. Ancient and modern quarrel, 16th century CE and 20th century CE. And the correct explanation: the quarrel of ancient and modern began overtly as a literary and artistic debate heated up in 17th century and shook the academy. Frank, simple. Question number 90, again we have to find Dostoevsky, surprised by sin. So problem of Dostoevsky's poetics, and surprised by sin is a work about William Blake. And who did the dissertation on William Blake? It was Stanley Fish. So one answer we can just give, we can just find with that, with one thing. So surprised by sin is by Stanley Fish. That was his PhD dissertation. So C1 we have to first find, and it was in only two options, or two options. So these two can be eliminated, and the next thing that we know is about the problem of Dostoevsky's poetics, and that is by Mikhail Bakhtin. Simple. B is third. In which option? Only one. So even if you knew that one, you would have answered. Got it? And simple. The poetic prose is by Tsvetan Todorov, and Todorov was a Bulgarian French historian, philosopher, structuralist, literary critic, all the profession. Anyway, problem of Dostoevsky's poetic is by Mikhail Bakhtin, who is Russian. And again, Stanley Fish explain his partly biographical. Milton, thou shouldst be living at this hour, published. There is no such thing as free speech. Simple. The Way Women Write is by Hayat Mary. Again, 91. Question number 91 is in your screen. Again, two statement according to W.H. Aden. The importance of being earnest is the purest example of English literature of the verbal opera. So, and Oscar Wilde possessed profound insight into the range of arts that in a combined form make theatre performance possible. It seems quite good. I mean, that is quite correct. So it seems like both statements are correct in the answer, and we have the explanation. Of course, W.H. Auden called the importance of being the only pure verbal opera in English, and there can be no doubting its crystalline brilliance. The importance of being earnest, we know, in full, in full title, subtitle is a tribal comedy for serious people, and that is played in 3 acts by Wilde and published in 1895. Remember, simple story was there, a satire of Victorian social hypocrisy, and it is a play about wit, and also it considered Wilde's greatest dramatic achievement. Remember the important character, Jack Worthing is a fashionable young man who lives in the country with his ward, who Cecily Cardew, and he has invented a racist brother named Ernest, who's supposed to exploit, give Jack an excuse to travel. What happened that Jack Worthing was actually pretending himself as Ernest, and when they found out that he's not Ernest, and what happened eventually happened at the end of that, it is revealed that actually Jack Worthing is really Ernest, so he should not pretend. So anyway, these are important things. And question number 92, J. Hillis Miller, one of the leading exponent of deconstruction, does a deconstruction reading in which of the following poem by P.B. Shelley. So we have to find which one J.H. Miller analyzed, right? So for that, the answer, tell me, The Triumph of Life, or Ode to West Wind, or Revolt of Islam, or The Witch of Atlas. So the Triumph of Life, that, and we know that it is a kind of trend now that they are asking about unfinished work of P.B. Shelley, right? And that question they have asked in twice previous year. So The Triumph of Life is a kind of trending work for P.B. Shelley. So you can just guess also if you don't know. The Triumph of Life is the correct answer. And why? We have the explanation. Because it was the last major work by P.B. Shelley before his death, and the work was unfinished. And remember that Shelley wrote the poem at Casa Magni in Leiria, Italy, and he modeled the poem written in Tarzarima. Of course, you should know the form of that particular work because this work is quite trending right now. So Shelley was working on the poem when he accidentally drowned on 8th July 1822 during a storm on a voyage from Leghorn. And J.H. Miller touches on the triumph of life in his essay The Critic as Horse. So he actually mentioned this work in The Critic as his work. Who? J.H. Miller. Question number 93. Which of the following theories identify metonymy and metaphor? Two things quite very important is there is also work, complete name of the work also. These two terms was mentioned. That was by Roman Jacobson, and the work name was metonymy became important in French structuralism through the work of Roman Jacobson. Essay was The Metaphoric and Metonymic Poles, and Jacobson relates metonymy to the linguistic practice of syntagmatic combination and to the library practice of realism. And some of the example he was also given, one is in the scene of Anna Karenina's Suicide, Tolstoy artistic attention is focused on the heroine's handbag, and in War and Peace the synecdoche, hair on the upper lip or bare shoulder, are used by the same writer to stand the female character to whom it is all about metaphoric and metonymy. So all the metaphor, why it is important, are mentioned in Jacobson work. So 94, The Writer and the World by V.H. Naipaul is a collection of essays and non-fiction. Actually that question was dropped, and the right answer that I have put is collection of essays and non-fiction. Got it? The correct explanation, The Writer and the World essays 2009, which was published in 2002. And simple, The Writer and the World essays published in 2002, and it is by V.H. Naipaul, and it is what? Collection of essays and reportage, or many previously published, spanning around 50 years of 50-year career of Trinidad. 95 Canadian Multiculturalism Act was passed in the year 1988. So now we have to critically analyze the particular poem that you will find in your PYQ. All the explanation is also there. We'll just move quickly. According to the speaker, Mr. Bleeny is what? A sad and dull person. So it's like in the opening one. So when you read it, you will just realize that he was dull. So we are done with all this. Today we were a little bit behind, but we eventually finished it. And in the next class, quickly today we won't wait till 2, but before that we are going to have paper 1 and finish unit first quickly, so you will be ready for tomorrow mock test. And it's important that everyone should attempt. Let's see who gets the high mark. And anyway, it doesn't matter the marks. We are not going to show in any group or anything. You just have to pass. Got it? So next time on Monday we are going to continue our discussion on 2022 exam about shift 2. So be there. And also one more thing, if you haven't subscribed, you can subscribe the channel to know. And also if you want notification when we go live again, you can just press the bell icon and the video will be you will get notification about the video also. So for now, have a good day and bye bye.